Greetings people, this is Top Cat Jimmy and thank you for tuning in to my channel. This is video number 2 of my latest series, Mastering Your Own Tracks or Mixes. To or not to, that is the question. This is to make sure that we can clarify what mixing is and what mastering is, and I'm going to go into some other definitions of things where I'm actually going to show you the mixing and the mastering and how closely related they really are, and how that mixing, most of the work is done, and that the mastering part is the finishing touches. Alright, so let's get on with the video, and we'll see you there. Thanks. What is mixing? Here's mixing. Okay, look it up online for yourself. Audio mixing is the process of taking recorded tracks, blending them together. Tracks are blended using various processes such as, and these are the essentials. Now if you got these, you're golden. Alright, and you do these right, you're golden. But these are necessities, is adding EQ, compression, and reverb. The goal of mixing is to bring out the best in your multi-track recording by, and here's other things of mixing, adjusting the levels accordingly, so you have playing what you want to play and hear more or hear less of. You see what I'm saying? And then the automation, can help you out. That's another part of mixing if you want to use it, or just going through the tracks and adjusting the volumes piece by piece. Otherwise, without automation, nevertheless, it does have to do with adjusting volumes throughout your tracks on the faders and also in particular parts of each instrument on that song. Now, also panning. Now, here's how I look at panning. Say people want to hear a band. They go to listen to a band, and so the guy setting up the band has to set them up in the right places, okay? The orchestra or whatever, the conductor's got to put these in the right places, or the person that's setting this band up does the same. So I says, I want the drums back here, I want the bass guitar over here, I want the lead electric over here. Wait a minute, this sounds better. It might sound better if you switch bass guitar over here or lead guitar over here. When you're looking on your DAW about positioning your instruments, that's what panning is, okay? Each instrument is a band member, let's say. You're setting your band accordingly to what direction you want them at and coming from and playing from. Panning. And then time-based effects such as chorus, reverb, and delay. Okay, now I know they said the EQ and compression and reverb. Yes, so reverb is an effect, but the dynamics of EQ and compression, all right, these are the things that you want most, all right, are your EQ and your compression. EQ has to do with your lows, your bass, your mids, and then your trebles or your high frequencies, okay? And so the compression has to do with bringing down peaks, all right, that are too loud, and then you can limit that. And then also, let's go on down to see what it says about mixing right here. Mixing is the process of blending all these together, all right, blending all the individual tracks and recording to create a version of the song that sounds as good as possible. The mix. The process can include balancing the levels of the tracks that have been recorded, fine-tuning the sound of each instrument or voice using EQ. All right, so that's mixing. Now, also, let's go to mastering. What does it say about mastering? It's basically the same page, but it says, what is mastering a song? A mastering engineer can unify your album with skillful use of EQ, gain, and compression. Well, what did it just say about mixing? Okay. Each track has to have EQ, compression. As far as gain goes, it has to do with volume, okay, but it has to do with gain on your compression, all right, your plug-in of compression, but EQ, gain, and compression to give it a consistent sound from track to track. But really, it's not actually given it a consistent sound from track to track in the mastering process, but it does in the mixing process. You do it track by track, where you will add EQ, gain, adjust your volumes track by track. That's done in the mixing process. The mastering process, this is where they're wrong, where it says, so it will give it a consistent sound from track to track. That's not done in the mastering process. That's done in the mixing process. What it does, I will correct that and say it gives it a consistent sound overall, okay, once you do individually overall in the mixing. All right, so, but nevertheless, the mastering is adding EQ and compression, all right, and perhaps even reverb, because you've already added your other effects in there in your mixing when it comes to delay or chorus or whatnot. But in mastering, you can add an overall little bit of reverb too, if you like, all right, and it may be advisable, but check it out for yourself, all right. And then here, the process also allows the mastering engineer to pump up the volume of your overall album. Well, that's where all these things come in, such as compression in EQ. And it's as simple as going to the master effects rack on and in your DAW, or say TASCAM DP24 in this case. When you go to master your mixdown, you add a global EQ and a global compression, and you can set parameters in there besides. All right, so yes, I'm going to show you that, like the chef taking the mix from the sous chef and putting it in the oven. All right, the hardest part of the work is done, in my opinion, is done in the mixing. And it's as simple as adding an overall master effect rack of EQ and compression and some reverb on the master, okay, of it, and then basically rendering it into an MP3 form, stereo MP3 form. It's not really hard, people. It's not really that mysterious. It's not necessarily the Shaolin Temple ancient art of whatever, okay? And besides that, why can't you learn how to be an expert in the ancient art of whatever in the Shaolin Temple? If you want to take Kung Fu or whatnot and everything, go entry level, you're still in, and you want to master at it, stay at it. For instance, so the same thing for, you know, any profession. Why would I discourage you from attempting to be, you know, to have a career field in whatever, and then many at that? Really? I would never try to discourage anyone from having more than one ability and one career and professional at it. At that one, it all has to do with the same thing. In this case, music. Okay? So, wow. But they says, yeah, they can, mastering engineer can pump up the volume of your overall album so it's as hot as it can be. Hold on. Okay? No. We don't want to make it hot. Okay? No. If it's hot, it's in the red and it's clipping. But we can make it sound unbelievable. Yes. Make it sound great. All right. So anyway, that's the other part of this. Okay. No clipping, and it begins at the source. Record clean, capture clean, adjust your levels, and you should be okay. And even at the end, if you do, most likely you won't have any clipping. But even if you do, I'm going to show you how to fix and correct that in a simple 1, 2, 3 step-by-step process. Easy as apple pie. All right, so let's go on here. All right, and I think that pretty much, by the definitions here, prove what I'm saying so far, and hopefully clear up these muddled waters. So let's get on with the rest of this. Mastering your own tracks and mixes, to or not to, that is the question. And I think we pretty much on this quest have so far established the fact that, hey, you know what? You can master your own tracks. You can master your own mixes. Okay, folks, so here I want to bring your attention to, first of all, some websites. And let's go first to this one right here, record production. All right, now this is a very legitimate website right here, and I'm going to show you proof of that. All right, so record production. Jobs in the recording studios. What are the jobs available? Now let's go on down to this one right here, recording engineer and also mastering engineer, because this is where we're going to be dealing with the mixing engineer and the mastering engineer, and to prove to you that in professional studios they are two different positions and two different jobs. Okay, now the recording engineer, you will be recording and mixing. All right, a full description of your job will be covered in other pages, but mostly this is the job to have. But in many cases, many studios don't have staff engineers anymore, as freelancers are used by producers quite a lot. Recording engineer interviews. Okay, let's go on down to mastering engineer. The mastering engineer takes the final mixed production. So as you can see, there is the distinction between the mixing engineer, otherwise known as the recording engineer, and the mastering engineer. Now, the recording engineer, what does he do? He records and mixes. And we're going to show you what mixing is. All right? And then the mastering engineer takes the final mixed production that the mixing engineer does, right? And he does his work on it. And I know it says transfers it to CD or plastic, etc., but that is just the very, very final where you're going to tag it and whatever, okay? So let's go on up to the next page here. And I'm going to bring your attention still to more of the website record production, okay? You're going to find that interesting, I do believe. Let's go to mixing versus mastering. On this page here today, okay, it says, mixing and mastering go hand in hand, but many musicians may be curious about what the difference is between the two. Since most people refer to both mixing and mastering together, they must basically be the same, right? Well, not quite. They are related, though. As I mentioned, there's a thin, fine line between the two, but nevertheless, there is that line. They are both part of the post-production process of recording an album. All right? They both involve using equipment to tweak the sound of your recording to get it sounding like a professional product or a radio-ready version, okay? But they're not exactly the same, and they are never done at the same time. They are not. Mixing and mastering are two distinct and separate steps of making an album, and that's what we're attempting to do here. We're attempting to distinctly establish what is mixing and what is mastering and what is the difference and what is the relation, etc. Now, it says mixing always comes first. After recording your tracks, they go to the mix engineer. Okay, so now you're recording them. But however, the mix engineer is actually going to do the recording of them. All right, according to what we just seen here on record production. All right, or say someone else is going to be doing the recording other than the mix engineer. However, it is that mixing always comes first after recording your tracks to go to the mix engineer. And then the mix engineer who listens to the song, he adjusts each track individually. Okay, every guitar track, every vocal, even individual drum microphone tracks. He makes sure each one's volume is at a good level in the right proportion to the others. He puts on effects on each track individually, like reverbs, and that's individually, like delays and compression, and of course EQ. Plus he puts effects on the overall mix as well, and in my opinion, no, he doesn't. It is the mastering engineer that puts the effects on the overall mix as well. All right, but he does pan everything left to right, you know, to whatever degree. We're going to show you this. I want to show you about automation a little bit. There's a number of things I want to show you here. And so let's see here. He sets up automation, makes sure all volumes, effects, and pans are adjusted exactly right for every part of the song every time he plays it back. Finally, the mix engineer. Now this is a good point. Finally, the mix engineer bounces the mix to a stereo audio file without doing any mastering. He's just done the mixing, he's added the effects, EQ, compression, reverb, and then in each of those things in every individual track on top of it, which requires to have to listen to every individual track solo itself, and then also completely in the mix together, or as the all tracks combined together besides, and then adding in the delays or whatever else he wants to do in any particular part of each individual track, say in the drums or the guitar or whatever. It may be through the whole track, it may just be part of that particular track. All right, and he bounces it, the mix, or he mixes it down to a stereo audio file. All right, and since he's rendered that into one stereo wave file, he takes that and he passes it on to the mastering engineer, and this right there, all right, once again goes to speak to the fact that the two engineers are different from each other. They're separate from each other. You have a mixing engineer and you have a mastering engineer, because this is the way it's done in a professional studio. And then next is when mastering happens. Mastering serves a similar purpose to mixing, but instead of being applied to each individual track, let's say, it is applied to the completed overall mix. This is what we're talking about. All right? It is applied to the two-channel stereo audio track. The EQ, the compression, reverb, or whatever else. So, then, it is the final step of the process, the cherry on top of the recording. Mastering gets the finished product to sound sonically full and balanced. Plus, it brings the volume up so the recording can compete with other professionally made albums. All right? Yes, it makes it radio ready, CD quality worthy. All right, I'm going to show you about these things. I'm going to show you about some automation. I'm going to show you about if it clips, how to correct that very simply with another piece of software. Also, to get it radio worthy ready. And so what is that and what does that mean? It's very, well, simple. All right, I'll show you what that means. All right, so although mixing and mastering are similar, they are not one and the same. All right, so a good general rule to remember: if your song is mixed but not mastered, then it is not finished. The other thing that we're mentioning is that part of the finishing process is tagging it, etc. Okay, so let's go to the next web page, and it's fixyourmix.com. It's mixing versus mastering. We're going to be dealing with that. We're going to be dealing distinctly with mixing, distinctly with mastering. So let's see what it says. From internet forums to music magazines, the term mastering is one of somewhat mythical proportions, as it says. Remember I said about that it seems to be of the ancient Shaolin temple art of whatever, okay? And it does seem to be mythical. All right, so it's the final step, mastering is, and to give you that big major recording label sound. Mastering is important and it is the final step. Okay, but any respectable mastering engineer will tell you, and I've mentioned this, he will tell you that mastering is not a substitute for a good mix. Do yourself a favor and do a good mix, because most of the work, as I mentioned, is done in the mix. And that right there affirms it too. All right. Mastering can, however, take a mix from good to great, and that it can do. All right, so let's see here. What else? The most important thing to understand is this. The mix engineer applies effects and level changes to each individual instrument separately and each individual track. A mastering engineer can only apply effects to everything in a mix at the same time. We're going to show you what that means and how it's done. All right? For example, a mastering engineer can't add echo to the vocal without adding echo to all the other tracks in the song too. So what's the point of mastering anyway? Mastering serves as a glue to your mix by making overall, well, it may say changes, but it's not really changes, it's improvements. An improvement, I should say. The main goal of mastering is to match the overall loudness and frequency balance, which now we're talking about EQ, bass, treble, and mid-range, to your favorite professional or amateur recordings and the other songs on your album, etc. Simply put, one song at a time, all right? That's where the mastering is done. All right. And then, of course, if you got a CD or an LP, then you're going to take those and burn them onto a CD, okay? And be able to add songs on that particular CD, all right? Until the LP or album is complete. Now, let's take a look at what it says about mixing in particular. Now that's, what was that? Mixing versus mastering? Now this is mixing. Mixing is often described as an art of balance, giving each instrument its own individual space within the mix to form a cohesive whole. And that's what we're talking about, arrangement and panning and volume. But sometimes a mix should be artfully unbalanced, drawing attention to certain elements while leaving other tracks in the background, only to be discovered gradually after repeat listens, and I agree with that. And you can check out my song starting from scratch, and you'll hear keyboards through it, but they are in the background, okay? And if you'll listen, and as you listen to a song throughout, you will discover those keyboards, that they're not matched up in volume with the guitars as far as the accompaniment keyboards. All right, they're not. And they're supposed to be in the background. So, all right, let's go to mastering. Mastering is what you need when your mix sounds good on its own. Remember, do a good mix. Good mixing. Or on a certain set of speakers. Mastering is what you need when your mix sounds good on a certain set of speakers, but it needs that extra oomph, exactly what mastering does, to make it come alive across all listening devices and compared to your favorite recordings. Regardless, I'm going to put it this way. I'm even going to say this, that if you have the right setup, in other words, you got a room that's at least acoustically treated correctly, and correctly, that can be found online as to how that is done, all right? And you find your reflection, first points of reflection, whatever, and you acoustically treat it like that and around your room, okay? That once you got that set up correctly and you have your triangle set up between your monitors and your chair, okay, and you got that sweet spot set up, okay? And you got your monitors at ear level, etc. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If it sounds good there, so you got to stop and use your common sense, people. If you get it sounding good in your studio, just like in the multi-million-dollar recording studios, they have confidence to know already to begin with. It's a scientific proven fact that if it sounds good in the studio, it's going to sound good out there in the rest of the world. Just like you should have confidence that if it sounds good in your studio that's set up correctly, then have the confidence that it's done. You're mixing and mastering. If it sounds great, it's done. If someone else is saying that it does not out there elsewhere sound good, then you know what? That's their opinion, and that therefore is subjective. Okay, but it has no bearing really on whether your mix and your mastered product is great, okay, or good. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So I want to turn this into only a 3-video series, and already this is turning out to be so much, whether I like it or not. So please bear with me. And if I cannot get the most interesting parts into this video, then as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and put a disclaimer in here right now that I tried, and I'm just really finding that there's so much more to talk about as I'm making this video. And I guarantee you that the most interesting parts of what I was mentioning with the DAWS and the TASCAM, and of really going through the steps of what it is to mix and master real direct, okay? All right, folks. So let's get on with the rest of this video. Thank you. So mastering is what you need when your mix sounds good on its own or on a certain set of speakers, but it needs that extra oomph to make it come alive across all listening devices and compare to your favorite recordings. Now listen, which that it will when it's done correctly, when it's mixed correctly in a correct studio. And I know they're also saying compared to your favorite recordings, they say use reference tracks. Here's the thing. Compared to your reference tracks, okay, are going to be, okay, what's it sound like on the overall quality, etc., etc. Look, you know what? If you're mixing this right, you get a good master, you bring it to CD quality, and you bring it to radio-worthy, ready songs. Then you know what? I'm going to show you in another software that, look, it's the same difference. It's going to be comparative to your favorite recordings. All right, now. And so we've looked at mixing versus mastering. We've looked at mixing. We've looked at mastering. All right, so we covered earlier that EQ, compression, and reverb are, especially EQ and compression, are essential for mastering. And I would even advise reverb. Look into it for yourself, though. You decide for yourself on your mastering process. And I'm going to show you some things on the DAWS here about these things that I'm mentioning. Okay, let's go to record production. Okay, let's take a look at this site. All right, and we'll first refer to recording engineer or mix engineer and mastering engineer. All right, let's take a look at these right here. And here you go, record production. Now, look who they're talking to and interviewing and whatnot. Stephen SLATE, all right? And Andrew Sheps. Andrew Sheps is an award-winning audio engineer. All right, let's go over here. Here he is, Andrew Sheps on record production, all right? They've got interviews from him. Let's take a look who Andrew Sheps is. All right, he's a mix engineer, a recording engineer, a producer, a record label owner based in Los Angeles in the United Kingdom. He's received Grammy Awards for Best Rock Album for his work on Red Hot Chili Peppers, Stadium Arcadium, and also Album of the Year, okay? Grammy Award Album of the Year for Adelaide's 21. And also Best Reggae Album for Ziggy Marley's Fly Rasta, okay? He's in the interviews of this website. Now, let's go back to record production and see. It says Music Mastering Online. So I also wanted to say, as I mentioned, I am definitely not opposed to have someone else master their own mixes or their own tracks, or even mix your own tracks, okay? I am not against that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to suggest that if you want to have someone else master your tracks, mix your tracks, master your mixes, whatever, then yes, you might want to check these people out. These videos are only really addressed against those who say that you should not master your own mixes, okay? And I'm saying that you can and you should if that's what you want to do. Go ahead and mix your own tracks and master your own mixes. Go for it. All right. So, see this right here. It says Music Mastering Online, Pro Mastering by a Grammy-nominated engineer. All right, so when you click on this, it's going to bring you to this website, Studio Pros. Now, this is a YouTube video. When you go and you click on that, it will play, but if you want to go to the YouTube channel itself, where it's at, this is it right here, okay? And Studio Pros, you want to go to their YouTube channel? There it is right there, okay? Studio Pros. Now, there is their website. Once again, Studio Pros, okay? Here it is, and here's who they are and what they're dealing with. It says, you want your songs to sound as good as the songs you hear on the radio? Well, Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney, Whitney Houston wanted to make the best sounding records. They hired the best artists, engineers, and producers. Studio Pros, Grammy-nominated engineer, has worked on the following legendary albums. All right, Celine Dion, Kelly Clarkson. Let's go on. Who else do I know? One Republic, Britney Spears, Jessica Simpson, Jerry Lee Lewis. Check that out. Brandy, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Jennifer Lopez. All right. Bjork, okay? Really? I mean, these guys, it says, for what? I'm not being sponsored by these guys. They are not paying me to say this. I'm just going to show you that I will advocate for, if you want your mixes to be mastered by a pro, here is a place you might want to check out, okay? And I've already showed you references with, all right, concerning Stephen SLATE on record production and Andy Sheps on record production. I want to show you this again real quick. Okay, here it is. Mike Banks' YouTube. He is obviously the one that's started this website, recordproduction.com, that I just showed you. You might want to check out his YouTube channel. All right, so people, what else can I say? All right. Oh, yes. I want to bring your attention to this. This is, okay, for a certificate from Full Sail University. Full Sail University, Music and Recording Audio Production Certificate. All right, now, that is a 5-month program, all right, for a certificate. And it consists of, if you want to do the bachelor's, I think it's 36 months for their bachelor's degree in audio production. But I want to check out their certificate, all right? So let's see what that consists of, as I had on here a minute ago. Okay, folks, so this is a 5-month certificate, 5 different courses in that 5 months. It says view a full listing of each course in the audio production certificate and estimate your potential completion date. You may want to take longer than 5 months. 5 courses in a 5-month certificate would say what? 1 month per each of those courses for the 5-month certificate. But you may want to take longer. Let's take a look at each one of these very briefly. Audio arts and the entertainment and media industries, and you get college credits for them. 3 credit hours for this one. It basically is going to talk about the overall view of the discipline of this. They will explore terms common across the audio arts industries as a means of studying the discipline, etc. Number 2, this is what I want to bring your attention to. This is a 4 credit hour, all right, course. and it says basic file and session management. I'm going to be showing you about that in this when I show you concerning the mixing and the passing it on to the mastering engineer, and how you got to have basic file and session management, okay, and how important that is, and show you how I do mine. And let's see here, it does talk about other things, but I'm going to be showing you this in my actual activity, okay, practical, what I do. Fundamentals of music, 3 credit hours. It talks about harmony, melody, rhythm, etc. And an introduction to music notation, which is sheet music, just, you know, an introduction to it. Ear training, etc. Okay, music, let's see, popular music using common industry terms. Okay, 3 credit hours, as I mentioned. And then sequencing technology has to do with MIDI. And explores the use of MIDI-based hardware, etc. So if you're really not interested in MIDI and you don't like using MIDI and you don't use MIDI, nevertheless, this is an introduction to it. It will give you some interesting knowledge of it. Okay, I may use MIDI VSTs or whatnot that are already pre-programmed and use them tracks. And actually, my keyboard over here is MIDI capable. All right, and yes, I have MIDI sync on my TASCAM DP24, etc., but still, those kind of MIDIs are different from the smaller keyboard MIDI. All right, so this is a 4 credit hour, all right, for that course, part of the 5-month course. And then audio workstations, the DAWS, digital audio workstations, okay. The audio workstation course explores DAWS, all right, and computer-based recording systems typically found in the modern recording and show production industry, all right. It talks about they'll receive instruction. The students will about practical experience with powerful computer-based recording systems at that. And so I have videos out there also talking about having a power conditioner and an external hard drive or two, all right, and to mix from your external hard drive. You have most of your things in your external hard drive, especially your music files, so that when you're using your DAWs, your music files are coming from your external hard drive, and you're really basically mixing from that rather than from your RAM in your computer. All right, so let's see here. That's that. All right, imagine your dream, create your happiness, live your life. Now, I'm not saying I'm living my dream, but I do want to at least imagine my dream, all right, and live my dream to some degree, all right? But it is about living my life and you living your life. And so to master, okay, and here is where I'm going to go back to this. Mastering your own tracks and mixes to or not to, that is the question. I'm saying that, you know what, you should, if that's what you want to do. Live your life. And you know what? The more that you do this and experience this for yourself, why not go back possibly for a certificate, all right? And these things, especially when you are familiarizing your own self with all these things and skills and fields and techniques. All right, now, I also want to say that I am taking the course by David Wills at ProAudioDVDs.com. And if you don't know about him, my goodness, we just mentioned Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston. He was Michael Jackson's audio engineer for a long time. He's been in the studio when Whitney Houston recorded her famous song, I Will Always Love You. He's recorded Phil Collins, I believe Mahalia Jackson, etc., etc., etc. You got to check him out, people. This guy's been at this for about 30 years, and he is one of the top world-renowned audio engineers out there, and he teaches. And so he has a course, Ultimate Home Recording School, Video 1, Video 2, and Video 3. And I'm going to tell you right now that in Video 1, this has a number of categories on it, okay? And on these videos, and video number 1, he's got the introduction, which has a number of categories to it. He has session 1 on here, which has a number of categories to it. On the second video, all right, is session 2. Session 1 is what is sound. Session 2 is recording. He has session 3 on here that has to do with effects, and every one of these sessions have numerous categories in them. Okay, numerous chapters, that is. And so this is a full, exhaustive study. All right, and then video number 3, session 4 is mixing, and a number of categories to that. So yes, he is teaching mixing. And session number 5, mastering, and that has a number of categories to that. So mastering, yes, he is teaching mixing and he is teaching mastering. This is coming from a world-renowned audio engineer that is encouraging us and even showing us the secrets to and how to and to mix and master, okay? And mixing and mastering. So people, yes, should you or should you not master your own tracks? I say yes. You should mix your own tracks and you should master your own tracks. Not as dogma. I'm just saying you don't have to, but you can. If that's what you want to do, do it. Not only that, not only mix your own tracks and master your own tracks, but how about getting a business card printed up? Getting your business cards printed up and passing them out. And mixing tracks for other people and mastering those mixes and mixing and mastering mixes for other people. All right? And getting paid to do it. So yes, I'm going to say develop your skills. Be encouraged to do that. Do not be discouraged by other people saying that you should not master your own mixes or anything else they're saying you should not do when it comes to this music. Like Hans Zimmer says, check him out. He's got a master class online coming up. I've applied to it, and I might end up taking that master class. And he says that if there's a rule out there, somebody telling you you should not do it in music, and there's a rule out there about you should not do it, okay, in music, he does, in certain cases, advocate for breaking that rule concerning the music because that's the only way you're going to make progress, he says. Now, that is applicable in terms of things that are reasonable, okay? Now, there's certain rules that I would not necessarily break, you know, in certain cases. But even so, you know, people have mixed and mastered songs from hotel rooms, all right? And are getting phenomenal results. People have mixed and mastered songs from garages and gotten phenomenal results, such as even these guys have gotten Grammy Awards, some of them. So people, in this case, yeah, certain times the rules can be, I guess, superseded according to their results. But now I would not supersede the rules, okay, necessarily. I would do my best to apply some rules of engagement here concerning, you know, your studio setup, your sweet spot setup that I mentioned for the triangle between your monitors and your chair, your acoustics, hopefully, if you got acoustic treatment or whatnot. I would definitely encourage and advise those things. Definitely encourage and advise those things. People, this is Top Cat Jimmy. Thank you for tuning into my channel. Thank you for viewing this video. I say God bless, sayonara, adios, and we'll see you again the next time.